Hey guys, this is totalwar, and in today's video we're going to talk about the top 5 tier 0 units in Total War Warhammer 3. So first of all, let's understand what unit is a tier 0 unit. So tier 0 units are units that you can recruit in any settlement, minor or major, it doesn't really matter, as long as you have the main building at level 1 built there. And you also don't need any extra buildings to recruit these units. So spot number 5 goes to Chislerite Cosar. So why do I think Chislerite Cosar actually deserves spot number 5? First of all, Cosars are a hybrid unit, which means they got good stats all around, and obviously they're an archer unit with good amount of ammo, 20, and also 140 range is fairly decent for an archer unit. Their missile strength is 16 base missile damage and 3 armor piercing missile damage. Reload time around 11 seconds, pretty decent. And they also have the ability Buy Our Blood, which is gonna make them unbreakable for 30 seconds whenever their leadership is wavering or lower, which essentially is going to help them to stay in the battle for 30 more seconds. Chislerite Cosar is a fairly cheap unit as they cost 450 to recruit and 113 as their upkeep, although we have to take into consideration that these values that are represented here are all before any supply lines come into effect. So you can start recruiting these guys from turn 1, and you can basically keep recruiting them until the mid game and even sometimes the end game. You can even go full stack with these guys, plus the Lord and couple heroes to just hold the line so these guys can do the damage they do with their missile attacks. Although my recommendation to you guys in the long term is to replace these normal Cosars with the anti-large variant, which have 15 bonus versus large, which is quite handy, especially as Kislev goes against large entities quite a bit, even in the early stages of a campaign. Bear in mind that these Cosars with spears are not a tier 0 unit because you can only recruit them from this building, which makes them a tier 1 unit. Now let's get to spot number 4. So spot number 4 goes to Chaos Warriors of Khorne. So these guys are great melee fighters with great stats all around. They got 110 armor, which is super high. They also got the silver shield, which is gonna block off 55% of missile fire hitting them from the front. They got high leadership, and also they got frenzy, which is gonna boost up their melee attack, charge bonus, and weapon strength, and also give them immunity to psychology. These guys also have 15% spell resistance, which is gonna be quite handy whenever they're going against factions with great spellcasters. These units are quite expensive as they cost 850 to recruit, and their upkeep is 213, which is the most expensive unit in this list, by the way. But these units can definitely hold their ground against anyone, and in most cases even trade pretty equally with higher tier units. Khorne's Bloodletting is gonna decrease their upkeep by a bit, and the more you do it, the more their upkeep is gonna get decreased. So now let's just move to the next spot, which is gonna be Bloodletters of Khorne. So spot number 3 belongs to Bloodletters of Khorne, as these guys again are great melee fighters, not as good as Chaos Warriors of Khorne melee stat wise, but the thing that makes them better than them in my opinion is that they have way more armor piercing damage, and the bonus versus infantry makes them a way better unit than these Chaos Warriors of Khorne. They also have magical attack, which can bypass physical resistance. These guys also have physical resistance of 20%, and they also have 25% spell resistance, and that means they're 10% more resistance to spells than Chaos Warriors of Khorne. They can also cause fear, but the only problem that I see with them is they're a bit squishy compared to these Chaos Warriors of Khorne, but they definitely do way more damage than these guys would ever do in melee combat against infantry and units with high armor. And they are also a bit cheaper, as you can recruit them for 800 coins, and their upkeep is actually 200, but again with Bloodletting you can decrease their upkeep even further and make them more affordable. We had enough of Khorne, now let's move to the second spot. So spot number 2 goes to Blue Horrors of Tzeentch. So why do I think these guys deserve spot number 2 over everyone else? So first of all, they are a good melee fighter, nothing too special. The missile attack that they have, which is really good, and on both of their melee attack and missile attack, they have magical and also fire damage, which can absolutely devastate any unit. The range of 90 for a melee infantry unit that has this missile attack is not even that bad. They also have 13 base missile damage and 2 armor piercing missile damage, which is not too bad considering it's magical and fire damage at the same time. These guys have 20% physical resistance and also can cause fear, which can reduce the leadership of nearby enemies. What makes them really special in my opinion is that they have 160 entities, same entities as Skaven slaves and laborers, and they also have 1400 barrier on top of their 7700 hit points, which is basically gonna be an extra hit points that is also replenishable without the need of having regeneration on the unit, which makes them an effective unit. In every single one of your armies, you can bring a couple of them for the front line, as they're a great frontline unit, since before engaging, they're gonna unleash their missile attack at the enemy and absolutely devastate them before getting into melee combat, and them having the 20% physical resistance and the high entities plus the barrier is gonna help them so much against anyone. Blue Horrors of Tzeentch is also a fairly cheap unit, as they only cost 500 to recruit with the upkeep of 125. You can start recruiting them from the early stages of campaign through the end game. These units are easy to recruit, easy to replace if you lose them. They are a bit squishy unit, but that doesn't really matter since they have high entities, high hit points, high barrier, good stats all around. They also have a missile attack that does magical and fire damage. On top of that, their melee attack also has that, which can absolutely devastate any unit, especially units with regeneration, because they have weakness against fire. So before we get to spot number 1, we're gonna have some honorable mentions that came a bit short of making it into this list. By the way, I'm not throwing any shades at the dwarves here, so keep my name out of your freaking book. Our first honorable mention is gonna have to be Glade Guard. So Glade Guards have great stats all around. Look at their melee stats. They are better than most melee infantries. And they got high ammunition, high range, high missile strength. The only reason that I didn't include them in this list is because they're technically a tier 0 unit, but only in certain settlements in the game. And those are the Vudelvan settlements. As you guys can see, they are a tier 0. You can recruit them from the provincial capital at level 1, which makes them a tier 0 unit. But in every other settlement other than Vudelvan settlements, which are by the way limited in game to around 14 settlements if I'm not mistaken, they can only build outposts. And in outposts, as you guys can see, they need to build this building to be able to recruit them, which makes these Glade Guards a tier 1 unit and not a tier 0 unit. Moving on to the next honorable mention, which is gonna be Goblin Archers. Goblin Archers are a cheap option. Their stats are not the greatest, but you can buff them so much and make them into good units. And since they're cheap, you can bring tons of them in a couple different armies. Putting them in checkerboard formation is gonna do the job. And the next honorable spot is Demonettes of Slaanesh. So Demonettes of Slaanesh have great stats all around. They are arguably the fastest melee infantry unit in the game. They got magical attack, high armor piercing damage, physical resistance, they cause fear, and they also have devastating flanker. The only problem with them is that they are expensive and they are just too squishy, and if you're not using them as they are intended to, which is flanking the enemy and using that devastating flanker to attack the enemies at the back and mess up the enemy lines, they're definitely gonna get smashed in a head-to-head melee combat. Not that they don't like that, they are not as good as a unit like Bloodletter of Khorne in most situations. And the last honorable mention is going to be the Skin Cohort with Javelins. This unit is exactly like Goblin Archers in terms of you being able to buff them by so much in the research tree and also in the Red Line of Lords. A mediocre unit which is super cheap. They got good stats all around, but again, these stats are boosted. Bit of missile ammunition, which does so much damage, and also it does have poison imbuement, which is gonna debuff the enemy for a time. And they also have Vanguard deployment, which can be super useful. Them having 160 entity is just a bonus. Now let's just reveal the best tier 0 unit in Total War Warhammer 3. High Elven Archer is the best tier 0 unit in Total War Warhammer 3. So what are my reasonings for that? They come with a range of 180, and the range, by the way, is the second longest range out of any missile infantry units in the game, only second best to Wave Watchers, which are arguably the best archer in the game, with the range of 190. They got good stats all around, and they also have martial prowess, which gives them extra 12 melee defense an extra 2 melee attack as long as their hit point is greater than 25%. They got good amount of ammo, 24 to be exact, and they also have missile strength of 17, which comes in 16 base missile damage and 3 armor piercing missile damage, which for the most basic archer in the High Elven roster is absolutely crazy. For what they are a really cheap unit, and you can recruit them for 450, and their upkeep is 119, which with an amazing High Elven economy, you can support tons of these guys in your armies from the early game. You can go full stack or almost full stack with these guys with a couple of line holders and obviously your heroes and lords in a checkerboard formation, and they're always going to be a good matchup against effectively anything from the beginning of the campaign up until the end. You don't really need to recruit any other units other than these guys, at least until you have unlocked the recruitment of Sisters of Avalor, which are again arguably one of the best archer units in the game, and you're good to go. You can defeat any sort of army, even defeat some doom stacks with basic archers. Amazing unit, great range, great amount of ammunition, great damage output, and also super cheap, which makes these guys the best tier 0 unit in Total War Warhammer 3. I hope you guys have enjoyed. Just bear in mind that these are my personal opinion and you guys are entitled to have yours, and I fully respect that. Do you agree with me, or do you want to change anyone in this list? Do let me know in the comments down below. And also, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a like, as it really helps this video out to get exposed to more people so they can watch and enjoy this as you did. If you're feeling Chaos Dwarves at the moment and you want to learn the one thing you should always do in Drajoa campaign, click on this video. This is totalwar, and I'll catch you on the next one.